Let's make sure my sound is off. Can we get quiet on set? 3, 2.
I'm Rhea.
And I'm Kat. And we're on Snooze.
Let's get cozy.
We are getting cozy today.
Yes. Before we start today's topic, we are going to issue a trigger warning. We're going to be talking about some sensitive topics surrounding mental health. So to any of our viewers who might be uncomfortable with these things, this is your warning to click off. Otherwise, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, we're just gonna... Should we ease into it or should we just go full?
I wanted to kill myself.
Me as well. And that's why we're such great friends.
Yes.
Let's start by saying this. Everyone's journey is different. And the things that have happened in their own lives may have started this journey or still continuing that journey on right now. At the point that both of us are at in our lives, we've put in a lot of self-reflection and a lot of work to be in a state that works for us. Mm-hmm. Ray and I can both agree that there's a lot of things we still have to work on, a lot of areas that we still want to do better and feel more comfortable in. So, with that being said, this is kind of where we're at now in our lives. We're both really proud of where we are. Rhea's moving to Australia. She's doing the damn thing. She's living her Australian girl dream on the bobby. And me, I've never been so happy in my life. I've really just content with my life right now. I'm moving to doing a job that's more fulfilling, which is such a downer. I'm moving to do a job that's more fulfilling. Obviously, this podcast has been a really great outlet for me. I don't know if you would agree.
Yeah, it's been good.
It's been a little stressful, but it's creative. It gets our energy out and into something that we care about. Yeah. Just living my life. I have a cute little dog. I have a cute little girlfriend. And just living the dream.
And I just have my cute little dog.
Who will not be accompanying her to Australia.
So maybe we should do an update on mental health once I get out there. Because, yeah, I will not have my little Milo with me.
Which, this is a good place to start. Rhea is weirdly not dependent at all. Like, it can really go about your life and in these struggles, especially when she's struggling mentally. She can do it all on her own. She does not...
Remix.
She doesn't want anybody there next to her. But somehow, she got this dog, and he goes everywhere with you. I really feel like he has aided you in some way.
Oh, yeah, he's my best friend. Sorry. It's me and his podcast now.
Milo, take the mic.
Yeah, Milo's like my literal emotional support animal. He's not certified to any degree. He's just here for the vibes, and so am I.
Did you get him with that intention?
We got him during COVID times, so kind of, but also like to have something to focus our energy on.
I see.
And
he goes everywhere with Rhea. Everywhere.
Oh, yeah, if I could literally be like a kangaroo and open a pouch, I would literally stuff that motherfucker in there.
You seen those people with the strollers?
That's not me. Mm-mm.
You would walk
That's
him?
Cringe. Dude, that's what I do.
But you would kangaroo pouch him.
Yeah. I birthed him.
Goodbye. Goodbye. But even in that, I also got a dog very recently. I want to say, well, he's 2 years old now, so we got him 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And
you also birthed him.
I did also birth him. I've seen him since... We got him when he was 4 weeks old.
Damn, that's early.
They told us he was 10. He was not. We took him to the vet and he was 4 weeks old. Or something like that.
Were his eyes open by then?
Yeah, they were open, but he was like very... Like if you carried him outside for 5 minutes, done for the day. He'd be exhausted. So... And also, we've never had a dog before. So when they're telling me he's 10 weeks, I'm just assuming like, oh, right. He's tired. He's like a little tired boy.
He's just a baby.
No, exactly. But TJ has been such a motivator to get to get up, to do the things that he needs done. Even today, I took him to go to the groomer because, look,
Stinky.
it's great to have a dog that has you do these things, but sometimes I don't want to struggle with him in a bathtub. My dog is also a, what is it, 70-pound shepherd?
Yeah, fucking big boy.
So Rhea can carry him in a kangaroo pouch.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Cat rides him.
It's giving My Little Pony.
Literally. But yeah, our dogs have been there for us. They get us out of bed every day.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't feel like that was, like, I didn't know how real that feeling is to, like, have an animal that you take care of everything. You know, I have a family dog. Yeah. Which is, it's my family's dog. Yeah. But when we finally got our dog, and even when he has to go to the vet, he got sick the other day, and I had a mental breakdown. Like, I just could not handle it because he was sick, and I was like, oh my God, he can't speak to me and tell me what's wrong. But for my mental health, having a dog has been great. It's like having an it's like having an in-house bestie all the time.
No, yeah. I got Milo when I was having, like, probably the hardest time in my life, and I wasn't getting out of bed on my own. But because he needed to go out, he needed to play, he needed to do this, it got me out. It got me moving. So yeah, he was a really big part in, like, helping me.
And I think there are so many routes you can take when you're trying to consider how to take care of yourself best. I don't think I ever would have considered getting a dog to help me through, like, feeling unmotivated, feeling stuck in a rut. I'm very used to doing the same thing every single day. Yeah. I go to work, I come home, I do school, I wake up the next day to go to work. I'm very used to that cycle. But when you have a dog, which is something I definitely learned from you, it takes so much mindful energy to, okay, like, he has diarrhea, maybe I need to be doing this. Like, it takes so much more thought and effort to raise a dog, from a puppy especially. But this was definitely a route I never considered could help my mental health, but had been a godsend at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. It brings me joy to see him happy.
Yeah, I would agree. And our dogs get along. TJ is a little too big for this space, so he is not allowed during the filming of the podcast. But Milo
curls up in a little ball and is just a little king.
The last little episode, he was sitting right here.
Yeah.
The whole time. So I think having the pets is one area where we agree or find the same comfort, especially when we talk about our mental health journey, right? I think that otherwise we've gone a very different route, for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
My mom always felt it was really important for me to go to therapy as soon as I was struggling expressing my feelings. Whereas for you, it was a more, like, conscious decision once you were an adult.
Yeah, I was 20 when I started going to therapy. And haven't stopped since. It's been a literal lifesaver for me.
It's so great. Anybody who is, like, weirded out about going to therapy, you don't have to be on the brink of,
like, a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
I started off that way, but now, like, I'm doing so good and everything, and, like, I just go spill my beans to my therapist and just, like, talk about my day and this and that, and, like, it's just so nice to have an unbiased person listening to you and giving you feedback and giving you advice.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It even, like, for me at least, it taught me the type of, how would you say, like, second person? Like, whenever I'm talking about something that's making me upset or
having a second pair of eyes.
Yeah.
Or ears.
I've realized that the way that I react best is when somebody listens to me and then almost says to me, like, okay, do you want my opinion or do you want to just, like, be upset about that? Because I would find that sometimes I would get so angry when, like, people were like, you know, I'm talking to friends, which is not their fault.
Right.
But friends are giving me solutions and I'm like,
that's
honestly,
not what
fuck
I want
off.
right now.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want a solution. I'm angry, whatever. But it's gotten me to this point where I can identify the type of communication I need in like a moment, which has been so helpful. I mean, it helps me even when I get frustrated at work. It helps me like approach like a what's that called? Superior?
Yeah.
In a more composed and like less emotional place, because jobs can make you upset and they can make you super angry. And even like having a therapist, like I'll go to my therapist and I'll be like, okay, I need to have this conversation with my boss about X, Y, and Z. I want to say it like this.
Yeah.
What do you think? And she'll be like, like, you sound upset. Like, but I think that what you said here, here, and here is really good. Mm-hmm. This is how I would say it. And so it's just nice to have somebody that hears you and understands how to hear you, and then can, like, have that flowing conversation with you.
It can be very just fundamental things that you talk to them about. And like you said, it's just great to have another pair of ears kind of guide you through things.
Yeah.
I mean, I value everything she says. She's never, like, done anything to
steer me in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Everything she said is, like, spot on. She calls me out when, like, my mind is drifting in, like, other directions. And, yeah. And also, it took me a while to find my current therapist, who's a great therapist. I went through a different therapist before when I first started therapy, and even though I stayed with her for like a literal year, she wasn't the type of therapist that I needed, and I didn't know that. I didn't realize that, I guess, until I got this new therapist.
Well, sometimes I think what happens is you think, okay, this person's the professional, and so I'm not in the space to say, you're not working for me. Yeah, like I've noticed that a lot too. Like I'll be talking to, friends who are starting out, and they're like, yeah, like, this person doesn't really say like anything. They just ask me like, oh, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why don't you say that? Like it's also important to remember you're the other person in that room. And if it's okay to say like, hey, I feel like this isn't really working. Like your approach is not working for me. Because I've gone through that process too. I'm much more what I know after the first session.
Yeah, I give people like multiple like weeks of trial, but I also don't have it in me to like stand up and be like, you know what, like that's not really what I need right now. I need a different type of help.
Yeah.
Luckily that therapist ghosted me.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal. I've heard a lot of like I've talked to friends about that too, and they say that's their like fear. I don't know why therapists do that, or if it's like if something crosses the line and then they choose no longer, but I don't know why there's no conversation that like is had.
Yeah, I don't know. She was like, she was pregnant towards the end, and she was like, I'm gonna go on maternity leave. I'll hit you up in a few weeks. And I was like, say, okay. Obviously like a few weeks go by, she emails me and she's like, hey, like what days work for you? I tell her, never heard from her again.
That is like, great. That could be a mistake.
Right.
Why would you go through the effort of...
No, yeah, I'm like, maybe it got lost, but her... But wait, her not responding gave me the therapist of my dreams. So,
it works out in the end.
Yeah.
You know what that's
giving? I was hurt. I was like, wow, my longest relationship just ghosted me.
You know what that's giving is when your card declines at the therapist's office. And they know you have abandonment issues, so they actively ghost you.
Yeah, she literally was like, oh, you're afraid of that? Sorry.
Here it is, honey.
Yeah.
Deal.
That is so funny.
I don't think we've ever, like, talked about the point leading up to the therapist, but was there ever, like, a feeling of shame that you had when you were, like, okay, I want to go to therapy, but, like, whatever, I feel this embarrassment.
Yeah, I come from, like, a super traditional family who, like, at the time didn't believe in, like, mental health and, like, all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So there was just, like, this terrible stigma that came with that. And before I started therapy, I was, like, really going through it. And it came to a point where I was like, I literally think I need to see somebody because I can't keep doing this on my own.
Yeah.
And I didn't have, like, the courage still to tell anybody. And it got to the point where my mom started noticing that something was up with me, and she suggested maybe I go see somebody. And it was at that moment where I was like, yes, like, please.
Yeah, you like needed that reassurance.
Yeah,
I see.
because I'm like, it's one thing when you can tell something's wrong, but when other people around you are noticing that you're not doing well, it's like a wake-up call that you need to get your shit together. Otherwise, like, you may not make it.
And even that, I think it's so different when it comes from a parent too.
Yeah.
You know, your friends they see you during, like, even we've talked about it in a few episodes at this point now, breakups and
Just hard periods
family
of your time.
stuff. Yeah, like coming out, things like that. There are all these things so you can see when your friends are going through it. But I think even for us, there hadn't really been a point yet where we were in front of each other and being like, yeah, like, I actually am so tired. Like,
Yeah.
I'm tired. This is what I do every single day, and I'm stuck in this cycle. What do I do? You know, even between us, I think there was fear amongst us too, like, oh, we don't want our friends to worry, and like, we don't want it to be like
And
this
what if-
big deal.
Yeah, and what if it's not that serious? What if I'm just like, oh, just a little more sad lately? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get over it. Like, why bring other people into, like, what's going on?
It's like when you cry in the mirror and you're like, you start laughing because you're embarrassed that you're crying.
No, you're like, you're really fucking crying over
No,
this?
yeah.
Like,
Which I think is also the friendship dynamic we've had is, I think we are two people who make jokes about a lot of things. That's the way we cope through things, is like, oh, like,
if you can't laugh about it, you're gonna cry about it.
yeah. And so I think for us to sit down and be like, hey, I'm actually, like, having a really hard time.
I'm suffering.
Yeah, I am down in the trenches, babe.
I'm going to. It's not funny, but it's funny.
Yeah, like,
because, like, we've been there.
Even now, like, even how we're talking about it now is very much the energy we had then.
Yeah.
I think now we do have a time where we do sit down and we're, like, a little bit more serious about it.
Yeah.
But I think for us, joking is the coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And so it's especially, like, heavy hitting when a parent is like, you seem
Off.
You seem down. Like,
Yeah.
really down.
Yeah. And coming from somebody who wasn't, like, that close with, like, her parents, having my mom, like, notice that, I was like, oh, like, even somebody who, like, merely just is looking at me
Can tell.
can tell. Yeah. So luckily she helped me find a therapist, the one that ghosted me. I never told her. She was like, what happened to her? I'm like, I don't know. It just, like, wasn't working.
You couldn't
I
tell
couldn't.
her.
I was embarrassed. I'm like, who the fuck gets ghosted by the therapist?
If you know the feeling, you know the feeling.
Yes.
And I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
That's
fuck
fucked
that
up.
bitch. Move on. The next one's the better one.
It's true.
Second time's the charm.
Oh gosh. But I think that is definitely something that we share, in that we also are, I'm really attached to my mom. And so, right, she put me in therapy when I was like, I want to say 13. But there were a lot of things happening in our own lives. My mom had just met my stepdad and we were moving in with him. To me, felt relatively fast, but they had already been dating for 2 years, which I had no idea. But, you know, we're moving in and I'm going to a new school, and the school is really small. It's a Catholic school. And I was getting bullied a lot. I wasn't doing well grade-wise. So I think my mom noticed those things and was like, okay, I think she needs to have an outlet to talk. And that was always kind of the energy it had. But then when, you know, I'm an adult and I'm living on my own in Sacramento, there was a point where I was just exhausted. I was tired all the time. I felt mentally beat up every single day. And there is this feeling like I don't want to worry anybody. Like, what if it isn't that serious? And even with my friends, like, we would talk about it. You and I would talk about it. But I would be, Rhea knew, like, don't ever bring this up to my mom because she's going to worry too much. And, like, I don't want to make her feel bad or, like, worry about me because, like, it's fine. Like, this is just
It's a phase.
Yeah, it's a phase. It's fine. But I think there is something to be said about, like, even amongst us, there was a little bit of shame for sure.
Yeah, because especially like the times too. I know it wasn't that long ago, but
It
topics
feels so
like
long ago.
that, yeah, were very taboo still. And it was like, I feel like in the last like 3 years post COVID, that's when mental health started becoming a more open topic, a more mainstream topic. Everyone's like more worried about that and focused on those things. But also, coming from immigrant families and traditional like mindsets, you grow up with shame around those topics.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing to like, I think we had the fluidity in our friendship to like say, oh yeah, like I'm actually really down bad. Like I'm actually struggling.
Yeah.
And it would be like haha funny. And that would like help for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then when you're consistently in those feelings and you're not finding an outlet, for sure it's like there was this fear on my end where I was like, please don't tell my mom. Like I'm telling you these things because like I have to tell someone.
Yeah.
Like please don't tell
Yeah.
anybody else. And I think that shame was something that I didn't get over until I had moved back home.
Yeah.
And I had to like really reevaluate my life for sure.
Yeah. Mine was a little bit different. I had gotten to a point where I needed to be put on medication, like for my own sake. I didn't want to. I was like, no, like it's not that deep. Like I can do this on my own. Like who the fuck needs medication? But it came to a point where it was like, no, like you literally need medication. Like this is like one of your last options. So on top of like the shame of being in therapy and struggling mentally, like having to be prescribed something was an added layer of shame that I have never felt before. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, no one around me is being medicated. Everyone else is like getting better and I'm like getting progressively worse, and medication is like the cherry on top. But once I started medication and started that like healing journey, it took a fat minute, but more conversations were being had in my house about mental health and how important medication is. My mom did like hours and hours of research to see what the fuck I'm taking, and
Your mom is also very she's very, I mean she has a PhD. She's very knowledge driven or research driven. And so I think in your case, like for my family, it was not a thing to therapy was all do it. Like go find the resources, but the idea of getting medicated for something was not as welcoming as like this idea of going to therapy.
Yeah.
And so I definitely carried that like, no, like it's not that serious. Like I don't need to be, and like there was that huge fear on my end to pursue that route. But your mom, my parents are also not of that background, and your mom had put so much research into, okay, this is what this is how this works in.
Yeah. Well, I remember like when my therapist told me like this is what I'm going to put you on, start taking them like tonight. I was like, whoa. I'm like, I don't know anything about what I'm about to ingest. And I started taking them, of course, or actually I had them for like a week in my possession, and I did not touch them, and I didn't know how to tell my mom, like, listen, like it's come to this point.
18 at that
I was an adult.
I wasn't 18 yet. So my mom had to like sign off for it. I forget that you were 18.
Yeah. I was 20. So it took me like a week to process the fact that like medication was my only route to like beating this thing. But also on top of that, having to tell my mom. And when I told my mom, like she to some extent felt like a failure as a parent that she let her kid get to a point where like I needed to be medicated. But come to realize, and I think this is also difference in what we experienced. For me, it was like a chemical imbalance that's in my head. And it would have happened at any point in my life. It happened at that point. And after thorough research my mom did, she also realized like, oh, it wasn't like her fault. She shouldn't feel like a failure. It's just something that you need to support your kid and need to like help them get past this.
It was also, there was a point where things were not working. And I think my mom knew that. And there was especially when I was in Sacramento, there was this point where we were just like, my my mental state manifests itself in my physical health. And so I was getting super sick all the time. I was like barely being able to eat without throwing up right away, but I would be starving. Like I would be so hungry.
Yeah.
And it was just like one thing after another. My health was just deteriorating. And for me, it led me into this huge hole because I had started going to therapy. I was like explaining, I don't know what's going on. Like the things that didn't used to send me then send me now. And they lead me to spiral for months.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know where this shift happened. And they're telling me, I'm at this point, I'm 18. I'm past 18. So they're like, oh, you need to do that. You need to get on this and this. And I'm just like, I don't, like, how is it that I've always, I have a very different background with therapy. I've gone since I was 13 and I've followed that track very meticulously. I hate when therapists assign homework, but at that time I was doing it. I was like writing in the I feel, like the kind of like sentences. And so to have such a huge change all of a sudden was so odd for me. And so on my own, I was like looking into like, what is going on, this and that. And later, so many years later, it's almost sad to find out like so many years later. But I'm like having a conversation with my mom and we're kind of talking about this time period in my life. And I was like, she was kind of aware of my struggles with finding a birth control that worked for me. I was like gaining a ton of weight, which is not necessarily bad, but it would be like I would have to buy all new clothes and then the next week none of them would fit. And it was like so odd. I've never had my body fluctuate like that. And I was telling her like I just feel out of control of my body when I'm on this one. She's like, okay, try this. Like we're going through all this trial and error. Of course, I learned later that a side effect of birth control is like depression, anxiety, these extreme mood swings. And my mom says to me like in this one-off conversation, she's like, yeah, that's why like I like have to work. I also had to work to find one that worked because it would make like I would get so angry so fast or I would be so sad so fast. And then I realized it was because I was on birth control.
Yeah.
And I was like, why did nobody tell me that? Like, why?
I mean, they fucking give you a huge ass pamphlet with like micro words.
No, the
of,
font
like,
is
every
0.2.
Yeah, like there's no way anyone's sitting through that and
Yeah.
reading that. And luckily now people are starting to realize that
Yeah,
birth control does alter your mood terribly.
and it didn't take me. I was on it consistently for trying different ones too. I was on it consistently trying different ones practically every 6 months for 3-4 years. And it just makes sense that as soon as I was, obviously, I don't need to be on birth control anymore. I'm with a woman. But I had decided to get off of it like, I want to say 2 years before I had met Victoria. And it was like a switch. Like one day I just felt better. And it was really odd to like think, oh my gosh, it really was that. Because I also was like in my head, like, oh my God, like hearing a therapist in my head, like, I think that you're just wanting to find wanting to find a reason. But it really was like 2 years after that, I felt so much more connected to my mind and to like the way that my body reacts to my period. I just felt 100 times better.
Yeah.
So it really is like such a battle, I think especially for women to have to not know these things, but then to go through them and then actually feel like you're losing it mentally, to not recognize the body you're in, and then all to find out that, oh, it's because you're on a
stupid little pill.
Exactly. Which is a very different experience for the both of us. Because as soon as I was off it, the sun was brighter. Like, I felt so much better.
Yeah, because I was also on birth control. That did not work for me, but for physical reasons. But even coming off of that, my mind was still in the same place. My body was getting better literally overnight. Basically, I literally got my period every fucking day for 9 months until I stopped taking until I took the implant out.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that's one way for birth control to work.
Just be on your period all the time.
Period 24/7. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I had maybe 2 days off
That is
not in 9 months.
that it sounds awful.
It was literally the worst thing ever. And then I started doing the pill, but that didn't work for me because like it just nothing worked for me.
Yeah.
But I also did not give a fuck anymore, and then I started dating somebody who I didn't need to be on birth control with, and I just have never been back on it.
Yeah, I would never. I think for me, I would never consider going back on it for sure. And maybe this isn't entirely, being, even the conversation of being gay and having kids is like an entirely different conversation. But the idea of going back to something that gets my body ready to do that, to have children, to the hormones is what scares me the most.
Yeah.
Is because I know it brought me to such a miserable period in my life that is what it scares me the most about retrying this process, and the fact that like sometimes doctors are just like, oh, it's like that, it's fine.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
good. Women all over the country experience this. Well, yeah, let's figure out why.
Yeah, I'm like, please, like I actually hate this though. Like,
yeah,
and it's so hard to even in that tell a doctor, no, like you don't understand. I don't want to be on this because I actually like want to die. And they're like, it's just because
a side effect.
Yeah, it's your cycle. And I'm like, that was never a thing before.
Yeah.
And it is such a, even that process is so invalidating to that experience. But I would say now it's knowing that that's what it was, and being in this place where I can go to therapy and that works really well for me, learning through, what is the 3 letters? The one where you talk. It's the behavioral
therapy.
Behavioral therapy? Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah. Behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
CBT is the type of therapy that works really well for me. And even to this day, I do my monthly checks and I'm like, hey, girly pop, I hate my job and like I am stuck in a rut. Help me.
Yeah.
That really works for me, and these processes have only led me to thrive after that.
Yeah. Interesting. I also did cognitive behavioral therapy for a hot minute, but I didn't like it very much.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. The lady was assigning me homework, this and that, and like, I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I just need you to like hear me and like have a conversation with me so then we could like do something.
Yeah.
Not give me homework. Like, I know what I'm feeling. Like, tell me like what I can do to like be better in this next week before we meet each other again.
Yeah, and I think for me it's, I tell them, I've gone to the point where I tell my therapist in the beginning, I will do the homework when I feel it's necessary, but I do not want to have a homework assignment every single week.
Yeah.
And they'll tell me like, okay, like I could work with that. Like, would you be comfortable doing X, Y, and Z? So a lot of the things is like one of the times I was reading this book about family generational trauma, and so I was like telling her, I was like, yeah, I started reading this book because I saw it, like it was recommended to me, whatever. And she was like, oh, maybe we can make an assignment out of that. Like we both read the same section or passage, and then we come in and we talk about how you feel in relation to that. So I think it's like that for me works.
Yeah.
But like to fill out paperwork and like,
yeah.
Like, I'm like, girl, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that like does not work for me. I don't do homework for school. I'm not going to do homework for you.
I also don't do homework for school, but like,
that's a lie. I do
that's
homework,
different.
but like with a gun to my head.
I think that there was a lot of anxiety, just on my end, but to film this episode was really nerve-wracking for me. I think we've talked about it as it's happening, in our lives. Obviously, we've been friends for so long that these conversations are going to come up.
Yeah.
But I think that,
like, laying it all out there.
In this format, with 2 mics, an emotional support animal, and a camera, it is a lot more nerve-wracking. But I would say that for both of us, or maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, but for me at least, I've noticed that since being more open about, even in our intimate friend circles, being more open about my journey, because it looks so different for even the both of us, but I think we can empathize and relate on some level, that it makes it so much easier to talk to people about, all the friends that I have now. I feel so comfortable saying like, yeah, like I'm having a really rough week and I'm not going to be reaching out a lot, but bear with me. Like there will come a time, that line of communication about expressing what we need from each other as a support group, as friends. I think Ray and I have been practicing it how would you say
Yeah.
unconsciously for so long that now it has become so much easier to say that to friends and say that to family. And I think it's been a really great thing for the both of us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's completely right. I started off, not telling anybody anything about what was going on in my mind and, driving myself further and further into like a deep, dark hole. But once I started talking to my friends and just the close people around me, I realized how good it was to have a support system. I really saw how much people truly loved me once I started opening up to them and telling them like how I was feeling. And you don't know that you have support until you ask for it. And that might be like crazy to hear because like, oh, support should like always be evident. But if no one knows you're struggling, they don't know how to properly support you.
Yeah.
So once you tell them, listen, this is what I'm going through, people start reading, people start helping you in ways that they couldn't have done without you telling them something. And that has just been like a lifesaver.
I agree 100%. I think that even for, I mean, I'll speak to my partner and I think her experience with mental health is a lot different than my experience and is even more drastically different from your experience. And so sometimes there are these moments. So, like, for example, every single time I have to go and I spend time with my dad and my stepmom, I do need a time to just like be alone,
Decompress, yeah.
decompress and just like not talk. Whereas she, on the other hand, is like, so how did you feel about that? Yeah, like I thought that was crazy. Like she wants to talk about it right then and there.
Yeah.
And so it's an hour drive back to our house. And at one point, I kind of told her, I was like, I actually just don't want you to talk. And like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, I want to just talk about it in my head before I start talking to you about it. And it's even in that I thankfully have a partner that is so willing to learn and is so willing to understand, like, okay, I don't see or I don't feel the same things that she feels, but I'm willing to learn how she needs me to support her. And it's such a refreshing feeling, especially when you have that in a partner, when you have that in your family, and you have that in your friends. And I think we've been doing that for so long, bestie.
Yeah, yeah.
I just get you. When you're overstimmed, I know not to talk.
Dude, yeah. Do not look in my direction when I'm overstimulated. I will throw up. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, everyone is, like, battling their own, like, problems and battles, all of that. And finding people who kind of show you the same support that you show them and, like, care and empathy are the people that are really, like, your people.
I agree.
If someone doesn't give a fuck about what you're going through or doesn't give you the support necessary,
leave them in the trenches, baby.
yeah, it's not a reflection of who you are and what you need. It's a reflection of that person.
100%.
Everyone has the capacity to care about other people, plain and simple. If they don't care about you, that's their problem, not yours.
That was wow. Can I hire you hourly? That was really good. That was very profound. Wow, girl.
But yeah, if you are struggling, there are so many resources out there for you to reach out to somebody and just get the ball rolling for yourself. There are people out there who are waiting to help you. Just say the word, make the first step.
And it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It can be embarrassing. You can feel like no one gives a fuck about you. Trust me, we know.
I'm a Scorpio. Of course I feel that way all the time.
Main character, okay. But like there are people out there who care and want to care for you. So no matter how alone you feel, no matter how isolated you feel, make that first step in getting somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be someone on the other side to grab your hand and lead you somewhere.
Yes, that was very, wow. The imagery on that almost made me shed a tear.
You're welcome. We're going to link a few different resources in our description box on YouTube. I don't think we can do that on Spotify. So if you're listening to us on Spotify, go over to our YouTube channel, and under this video's description, we will have resource links that you can check out.
We'll also post them on Instagram. So if you follow us on Instagram or you listen to Spotify, you listen to the podcast through Spotify, if you hop over to our Instagram, we'll also leave them there too. Or if you already follow us, they'll be there as well.
Yeah. Just remember, you're not alone. People out there care about you. And if you're feeling alone and not great, reach out to somebody. Someone will always be there for you.
100%.
I'm Rhea.
And I'm Kat. And this was Snooze.
Good night.
Good night.